Hello and welcome to On the Preds with me, your host, Alex Daugherty of A to Z Sports, and my co-host, as always, Sean Smith. Sean is back with us. We are ready to roll video and audio, ready to go for episode number 61 of our show. Welcome back, Sean. How's it going? Happy New
It's
Year.
going well. Oh, Happy New Year to you as well, Alex. And of course, Happy New Year to everybody out there in listener land. And I will say, if you've noticed that my background has changed, which I know that every week people tune in and they're like, what's Sean going to sit in front of today? You'll notice that it's different for the first time. And that is because there are some renovations happening at my house. So I've been forced into my son's room. So
There you go.
get away from the live action downstairs. So
Yeah, I mean it's always tough around the holidays because we all have different schedules. So just being able to record every week has been big. There's been some activity with this team that has been worth talking about for the last week.
yeah.
I mean, since we last had a show, the Predators have played 3 games. They went 1-1-1 in that 3-game stretch, which is very typical of this team.
Yeah.
I think it is just a growing trend where this team is not bad enough to be awful and not good enough to win every game. So
Yeah.
lots of 1-1-1s.
Yeah. I don't know. It's funny. There's been so many ties that have resulted in a loss, and I feel like that's fairly atypical of the team in recent years, at least. But it seems like they keep picking up that what we'll call the loser point on a regular basis. So, I mean, it's good they're getting something out of those games, but you wish they could just seal the deal and get 2.
Yeah, we're going to talk about just the team generally, and then we're also going to talk about Tanner Jeannot. I think that's a big topic these days because I know you wrote something about it, and I've just heard people starting to kind of talk about him in terms of what's happening.
Yeah.
Why is his drop off been so dramatic from last year being a really significant contributor, both on offense and defense and his special teams, and to now he has 7 points in 35 games and just can't really get anything going.
No.
So we'll talk about that. But the first thing would be just a quick recap of the last week. So rewind to last Tuesday. It was Tuesday, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Last Tuesday. To where they played the Dallas Stars.
Yeah.
And they suffered a 3-2 loss. Dallas scored with 52 seconds left in the third. I thought Nashville played, for much of the game, they looked okay. And then for most of the third period, they were just hanging on. So that Dallas goal with 32 seconds left, which I think was Rope Hintz, really just was a crushing loss considering that they just couldn't hang on 50 more seconds. So UC Stars played well enough. I've got some audio of John Hines talking after that game, but just generally speaking, that Dallas Stars game was, it was like better than the previous times they played Dallas. The previous times they played Dallas, it wasn't even close. And this time it was okay. So
I think, too, you've got, like you said, the third period seemed like they were hanging on. It's like sometimes you see that flash of, for the first 2 periods, pretty solid hockey. And honestly, playing well enough to win the game, and then the third period coming along, and for whatever reason, you have the old turtle come back into effect, and it seems like that again, like they're just hanging on. And when you talk about like the construction of the roster, especially with John Hines has said over and over, you want to be a team that wears down the other team. You can't get worn down yourself in the third.
And the Preds came back in that game. They're down 2-1, and then Yakov Trenin gets the shorthanded goal, and that was a really electrifying goal. I mean, that really did light the place up. I mean, it was a pretty packed house for a Tuesday game, and Trenin with some throwing himself into the glass, like you can see down there on the graphic, which is that's not Yakov Trenin on New Year's Day after a raucous New Year's Eve. That is Yakov Trenin scoring a goal in the NHL. That is in his natural state. That's what he looks like. So, so after he scored that goal, it was like, oh wow, the Predators could actually pull one out here because they had such momentum, and Dallas just kind of took it right back and dominated the third period. So they lose that game, and then I wanted to play this because this was John Hines after that game answering a question about urgency, about having a sense of urgency with, at the time it was December, but we're rolling into the second half of the season, and is there a sense of urgency regarding, these games that they're dropping, these points that they're dropping in the standings? Obviously, they're in 6th place right now. It's not like they're in a playoff spot, but is there a sense that, like, if this doesn't turn around in the next few weeks, like, then they need to kind of pack it in for the season? Anyways, here was his response.
Here, and you get farther and farther into the season, knowing what you're going to need now to make a run.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we're well aware of that. I think it's, I think the urgency is always, it's always there. I think even when you come in and you start the year, I don't think you want to look at the first 10 or 20 games and not have urgency, because, lots of times you could see teams fall out of the race, early in the season, and I think there's a level of urgency there. Now, it's no different. The season continues to get shorter and shorter. So, finding ways to rebound and play well and get your game and find more consistency in our game is what's going to be the difference.
So the reason I wanted to play that is because I wanted to remind people, and also, like, kind of remind ourselves maybe a little bit, that as Shaun tries to refocus his camera. I don't know what's going on there, but anyways, I'm going to keep going.
Just roll with it. We'll figure it out.
So they're 35 games in, so they're right before the halfway mark of the season, and I think that there's something about, if we remember, John Hines in the past has talked about how they kind of treat the season in segments. There's like 10-game segments, and then there's also like 20-game segments. So they're at the end of the second 20-game segment, right? And the second 20-game segment, let me just do this quickly as I'm talking to you and trying to stall while I pull up the team game log on Hockey Reference, which is right here, and then I click this. They are 6-6-4 in that second 20-game segment. 500 hockey, right at it, and they have 4 more games left in that 20 games. So, like, if they win all 4, 10-6, that's kind of, I don't think that they're probably not going to win all 4 of those. Probably win a couple. Probably going to finish like 8-4 or something like that in the 20-game segment. So I think that is, I think the fact that they don't have really a strong sense of urgency right now just suggests that they may have already kind of figured out, all right, we probably don't have it this year. Let's just try to get some of these guys playing time. I'm not saying this is what's happening, but it could be we're right on that edge of, they might have to start thinking about next year and selling. Definitely not buying at the trade deadline, but selling, or just staying where they are in order to gain some assets for the future. But and I think that Dallas game is an example. I mean, like, that's 3 games against Dallas. You've lost all 3 in regulation. Even though you looked better in this one, you're just not as good as the Dallas Stars. And the Dallas Stars aren't even the best team in the Western Conference. So
when you put it that way, and you start thinking about, not just this season, but looking forward to next season and where the team goes from here, you certainly would hope that your second 20-game segment of section of the season would be a little more successful than 500 hockey. Yeah. Especially coming off of the first 20-game segment. I mean, you kind of put yourself in a hole in the first 20. 500 hockey doesn't dig you out very much at all. So, like you said, do you make that decision toward the trade deadline? Let's sell some pieces. Let's see what we can get. But, at the same time, I mean, Alex, at what point do you start saying, like, okay, so if we're not going to make the playoffs, like, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go toward trying to get a top pick? There's a lot of those conversations that have to start happening sooner rather than later.
Yeah, they would really have to. They would have to play definitely below 500 hockey for the entire second half of the season, not just the next 20 games, the entire second half of the season, in order to be even in the conversation. Because the Chicago Blackhawks are committed to being the worst team in hockey. The Anaheim Ducks are pretty close to it, and Arizona, Columbus are also pretty bad. So I don't even see them, even if they just tumbled the rest of the way. they're probably not even really a lock for the top 5. Well,
No,
maybe they're in the top 5, but they'd have to get really lucky. They'd have to move up in the lottery draft, which is hard to do with where they're going to finish. I mean, they're going to finish like 7th and like the 7th or 8th pick, and to be able to jump up from the 7th and 8th to like the top 3 is a really big gamble. Like that's hard to do. So, I mean, and you could also move down too, the way the lottery works.
yeah, and you're still not really guaranteed anything, but a better chance.
Yeah. So, but there were two other games from this past week. Speaking of Anaheim, the Predators played Anaheim on the 30th, which was Friday, and had statistically their most dominant win of the year, 6-1 over the Anaheim Ducks, which was just like a waxing. I mean, they kind of destroyed them. Now, some people say they didn't even look all that good. I disagree. I thought Nashville looked like clearly the dominant team. Anaheim had nothing. The Predators shut down the Zegras line, which is all they have, and even John Gibson didn't have a very good game. So, not a great game for Anaheim, and the most dominant win of for the Preds this year. And then they follow that, and so UC Saros plays in that game. And then the next night in Vegas, they play the Golden Knights, and Kevin Lankinen starts. And pretty wild game. Did you watch most of that game?
I saw some of it. Yeah, I didn't get to see a lot, but
I thought that was really one of the more fun games of the year, to be honest. Like just from a competitive standpoint, that was a really exciting game to watch. Just how everything happens. Yeah. I mean, the Forsberg hat trick was key, but also like the both teams were just running up and down the ice. I mean, it was really high action, good saves by the goaltenders, some special teams, but not a ton of special teams. And then the Predators tie the game with like 3 seconds left to send it to overtime. Philip Forsberg's hat trick, and then they can't get the second point because Nicholas Hague scores in the overtime on a delayed penalty. I think, right? Yeah, I think it was a delayed penalty.
And Forsberg hit the iron as well, so he had a chance to. To get 4. I did see the end for sure. It was the beginning.
He could have had he could have had a Rocco Grimaldi special, 4-goal game.
Is that what it's called now?
Oh wait, yeah, Rocco did that, right? Rocco Grimaldi.
He did.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he was the second 4-goal game in Preds history. Who had the first one? Do you remember?
Eric Nystrom, I think. It's Eric Nystrom.
I think so. Yeah. But now we'll call it the Rocco Grimaldi special.
So so again, Preds go 1-1-1. Now the performance against Vegas is kind of hard to judge because it's just a great individual game from Forsberg. So when you have such a hat trick game and you lose, and really kind of were being dominant. I mean, there was a huge stretch of that game where Vegas was just owning the game. I mean, the entire second period, most of the third period until the final 8 minutes, Vegas was dominating. So I don't know if you can really feel good about it if you're the Predators because you still got a point, but that's how this season has gone. You see results that are good on paper, but you still don't really feel great about them.
Yeah, I think the game log reads better. Forsberg ties it up in the last 4 seconds of the game, had a chance to win it in overtime, and you think, well, against the Vegas Golden Knights, that's not bad. They're putting on a good performance. They're doing good things, but then again, like you said, Vegas kind of dominated. I think the Preds, I don't want to say got lucky in the fact that they were able to tie it up, but I mean they were playing with an empty net. They had all these things that they had to do, pulling out all the stops to try to make it happen. You want to see, again, you hear Philip Forsberg hat trick, you want to see a much more commanding game. And it just wasn't realistically. But I think there's been quite a few hat tricks in recent Preds history that have resulted in losses. If I recall, I remember there was one maybe by Duchesne had one against the Canadiens at the beginning of last season. Yeah, but they still lost, and you're like, oh gosh, put it all together and it should be great. But when you can't put it all together like that, it's really frustrating. So
yeah. So that kind of wraps up last week, and just overall the The team is just not pulling away, but not slumping either. So that's the way things have gone this year. I want to talk about what you wrote about Tanner Jeannot, and then also some line kind of ideas, or not ideas, but just some comments on the line combinations. But before we do that, we need to talk about our friends at Relax the Back.
Oh.
So if you are wanting to live better, it's 2023. You want to start off your year the right way, decide to make changes in your life that will make you feel better, live better, and sleep better. No better place to do that than the Relax the Back store in Green Hills. We're talking about customized comfort options for the office, for sleeping, for working. You've got quality recovery options, like if you've been injured or if you're just recovering from a workout, massage chairs, recliners, foot massagers. Here's a good picture, if you're watching us on YouTube, of the store that they have there in Green Hills. They've got all kinds of stuff for you to test out, to sit in, to relax in, to lay on, to see what it feels like and see how much better it's going to be in your house when you have those options. Sleep options, Technogel, Temperate Ergo, Smart Base Wedge Systems. It's a long one. But anyways, you've just got to go check it out. All of this stuff will relax your back, as the name of the store implies. Check it out there in Green Hills at 2020 Glen Echo Road. They have a sleep agent on hand every day to talk to you about what's going on, what your pain issues are, how this store can help you in improving your life. And most importantly, talk to Glenn, because he owns the store and he'll tell you about those 4 pillars of wellness: healthy sleep, healthy body, healthy work, and healthy mind. So, Tanner Jeannot, what's going on with him?
Yes.
Tell me.
Well, okay. So, I mean, it's no secret. I just put out an article about this. So, if you want to take a look, you can see it over at www.a2zsports.com. But I will say this. Jeannot made himself a pretty good name in Nashville last season. He definitely became a fan favorite, and for good reason. He's an exciting player. He created chaos in front of the net. He scored a lot of goals that way. And really, for a guy that was undrafted at every level, really came out and I think turned a lot of heads, both figuratively speaking in the crowd, but literally speaking on the ice as well. Because along with that goal scoring, it wasn't just, oh, well, he scored a bunch of goals. He also beat the crap out of everybody. And I don't just mean like against the boards. I mean, he fought a lot of dudes and he won a lot of those fights. So you're looking at a very a player that's kind of built for Nashville, I guess you could say, that in the style of like Jordan Tutu or someone like that. And so you come off that season and you expect next season, hey, it's going to be good. He's going to get right back to business. And that's really not been the case.
And he's a pending RFA, so he's due to make some money if he plays well. Yeah,
I mean, you're thinking, okay, so here we've got the end of the contract. And again, that contract is based off of hustle, hard work, good physical conditioning, and just doing what's asked of you every night. And it's coming to a close. And as it sits this close to the end of the second 20-game set here, not going so well. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I can bring them up really quick, but we're talking right now 3 goals, 4 assists.
In 35
and you're
games,
almost halfway through the season. And what's worse, you think about what happened last season. It's not like, well, he's a little bit down. I mean, dude scored, let me find it again. He had 24 goals and 17 assists. I mean, that's huge.
So do you think maybe it could be like because I know that you brought up something about line combinations, and some people have theorized that Jeannot was since he was such a big part of the herd line last year, but that unit together with Sissons and Trennan and Jeannot maybe was just like a good overall line that kind of the whole is better than the sum of its parts or whatever. That maybe since that line has kind of broken up, that's part of the problem for Jeannot this year. Is that a working theory?
Well, I think the biggest problem is a lot of people like to say, oh, it's because the lines are changing. And I always try to caution people, like, you got to remember these are professional athletes. This is a game they've been playing more than likely since they were very, very, very young. They can adapt to things like a new guy on their wing or a different center. But I think what changes is when you have those lines changing so much. It's not so much that, oh well, he was playing with Sissons, oh he was playing with Trennan. It's more so that the lines that you're shifted to as they move around have different responsibilities and different expectations. You always knew exactly what that line was supposed to do, the herd line. You knew what they were going to do. They took a lot of face-offs in the defensive zone. You knew they were going to try to shut people down. They were going to play very physical. If you wanted to get back into the zone once they got you out, you were going to have to fight your way in. And once they were in the offensive zone, Jeannot's job was to get to the net front and cause chaos, look for deflections, tip ins, things like that. When you now are playing, say, on the second line with a different center and a different winger, or on the fourth line for whatever reason, now maybe that fourth line, when you're on in that situation, you're just there to shut down. Maybe when you're playing on the second line, you're playing with more of an elite scoring type of person, and you're trying to clear the way for their shot to go in more so than trying to set yourself up for the best tip in or deflection. And I think maybe, yes, to an extent, it has to do with who you're playing with, but I think a lot of it more has to do with what's expected of that line when you go out there on the ice. So it's a possibility, I think, and I think that's definitely a theory. Again, a lot of people will say, oh, because these guys have new line mates every night, they don't know what they're supposed to do. They can't get used to anything. And I don't think it's as much chemistry as much as it's about what they're supposed to do on that line or what they're expected to do. And again, if you don't really know out there, what I'm saying, think about how most people think or thought, past tense, of Eli Tolvanen as someone with an elite, shot, yet he was being used and deployed in a much more defensive setting. And so if you think about someone like Jeannot, who is there to create chaos in front of the net and look for those tip ins, look for those deflections, but now he's playing with someone who's a much better shooter, maybe he's more so there to clear the crease than he is to
I think that's definitely where he is right now. I mean, being on this glass line with Niederreiter, Jeannot is in a role that really gives him just kind of one task, like you said, and he doesn't have to be the goal scorer. Now, that naturally that puts him in less opportunity to be the goal scorer, which for him I think would be fine, because that line in particular, Glass, Niederreiter, and Jeannot, has been a very good line recently. I mean, like that. Yeah. I mean, Glass has been a big part of it, but that's been kind of an emerging. I wrote about that last week with Cody Glass, with my piece on Cody Glass. Like, I think that's been a big development. Not a huge one. It hasn't made a huge difference in terms of the game results, but it's been a good development. But so I wanted to talk about this because so there's a website, Left Wing Lock, I've been using for years, and most of the time it's just helpful for forward combinations. What I really like about the website is you can find the frequency of forward combinations that have been used all year, just by percentage. So there have been 10 different forward combinations. Well, I'm sorry, there have been more than that. Of the 10 most common forward combinations, well, first of all, could you guess what you think the number one most common forward combination for the Nashville Predators for this year over all 35 games? What's the most frequently used forward combination, do you think? Would you guess?
Out of all the players, out of all the forwards? I would say
what three players have been together more than anyone else?
Smith, McCarron, and somebody else.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
No, this is like all 35 games. Anyways, the answer is Forsberg, Granlund, Duchesne. Forsberg, Granlund, Duchesne. They've been a combination 10.5% of the time. That's the number one. The number two is Jeannot, Sissons, Trennan. So the herd line.
Okay.
The reason I think that's interesting is so that herd line has actually been one of the more commonly used lines this year. We just haven't seen them recently, right? I don't know when that line was busted up, but it was a while back.
Yeah.
But what I also find interesting is that of these top 10 most commonly used line combinations, Jeannot is in 3 different ones. He's in the herd line. He's played with Glass and Niederreiter, and he's played with where's the other one? Trennan and Jankowski. So I guess when Sissons moved up, Trennan and Jeannot stayed together in Jankowski, but it wasn't just Jankowski. At some point, it was other players. Johansson was with Jeannot at some point. Like, it's been kind of a mishmash, but Jeannot has been moved around a lot, and he's been probably moved around more than most, and up and down, right? He's been moved up in the lineup. He's been moved down in the lineup. He's stayed in the middle. So he's been moved everywhere. He's been a part of the penalty kill, not really a part of the power play. At least I don't think. But yeah, so he has been used a lot. I am of the school of thought that thinks that his moving around for him has been probably hurting him more than people would think. But I think the big thing is I feel like he's found a home with Glass and Niederreiter, and that probably needs to stick around for a while.
I think that's fair. I did find something interesting in my research, though.
What's that?
I've been talking a lot about individual expected goals, with the players this season, and something I thought was really interesting was last season. If you take his entire season into consideration, he was getting 0.66 expected goals out of 60. So for every 60 minutes he played, he was expected to score 2/3 of a goal, right? Now, what's interesting to me is that he was definitely outperforming that last season. What would you think his individual expected goals per 60 is this season?
Much lower?
Exactly the same.
Whoa, interesting.
0.66 per 60. And I think it's just a matter of he's not finishing.
Some luck, yeah.
He is a little more spread out is where his shots are coming from, but he's still primarily getting shots in front of the net. But for whatever reason, you can chalk it up to puck luck. It's not happening. So I think it's really interesting that the expected goals are the same, but the actual goals just aren't there. And that kind of, he's doing all the right things. He's not getting rewarded. We've heard that before with a lot of players. So, I hate that that's the way that situation's kind of worked out, but that just seems to be what's happening.
Let's look at his shots per game too. His shots per game has gone down, like getting his shots on goal. So I wonder if part of it is. I'm sorry, no, his shots per game is up. It's the same basically. Shots per game. I see it now. I was looking at the wrong thing.
Shooting percentage is much lower.
Shooting percentage is lower, but shots per game is the same. That tells me this is more luck than anything.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's getting the same kind of shots, he's getting the same kind of expected goals. He's playing with quality players, either with the same line as last year, or now he's with Glass and Niederreiter, which are quality players.
Yeah,
this is a luck thing. I just the more I look at this, the more I think this is he just needs to get some shooting luck.
Well, and look, Forsberg, similar impact. Like I said, much outperforming his expected goals last season. This season, underperforming. But last few games, he was the number one, star of the week, and for the NHL, had a hat trick. His puck luck, I guess you could say, is coming back. The wheel of fortune is turning for Forsberg. Is it going to turn for everyone else? Is it going to turn at the same time? I don't know.
And Jeannot, so the one thing we do have to think about last year. So Jeannot shot 19% last year. He is not a 19% shooter. There's no way. Like Alex Ovechkin isn't a 19% shooter. But every now and then you can have seasons like that. So I think Tanner Jeannot is probably in the neighborhood of like a 12% shooter. So, and that's more not because of his shot, but because of where he shoots from, right? That he gets shots in close. Forsberg is like, what, 15% or something like that? 14, 15 career percent shooter. That's more because he's, I
said career?
Career Forsberg. Let's look at it. Shot percentage, 12.9, even lower than that. So Forsberg, let's call him a 13% career shooter. Maybe Tanner Jeannot is like an 11% career shooter.
Yeah.
Again, Forsberg's because he's a better shot, but he's shooting from further out. Jeannot, not as good of a shot, but shooting further in. If Jeannot was a worse shot and shooting from farther out, he'd be like an 8% shooter. He'd be like a defenseman. But the reason I brought that up is, so Jeannot's obviously not a 19% shooter. So then you look at him this year and he's got like 5%. He's still underperforming on his career average. We just don't really know what it is because of last year's just an aberration. So he's probably going to he's probably going to score, probably going to go on a tear at some point. He's probably going to go on a nice little two week binge where he gets like, 3 or 4 goals in 6 games.
I'm gonna look this up because it may take me a second, but I think it's worthwhile. Because it's really interesting to me that. Give me just a minute here. It's acting squirrely. It's really interesting to me that you mentioned we don't really know what his career average is, and what I think's funny about that is I don't know why I'm having such a hard time operating the. Either way, he played 15 games with Nashville year before last in the shortened season, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of when he came up and and got noticed and recognized and was able to stick around. I want to say his shooting percentage then was like 21% or 23%. It's something ridiculous. Of course, that's really over a really small sample size of 15 games. But what's interesting to me is if you look historically, he's had a much higher shooting percentage over his NHL career. And just this season is astronomically lower. I'm not saying he's a career 20% shooter. That's insanity.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that the only thing we have to go on is just ridiculously high shooting percentage.
We need to figure out where he's at. He needs to find his shot right now and then figure out where he's at and then get a contract where he can not worry about that for a few years and find the consistency. The best example of a guy that you could just count on every year for me was Craig Smith.
Yeah.
Tanner Jeannot, pretty different player from Craig Smith.
Sure.
But go look at Craig Smith's like stats. It's like every single year it was 200 shots and he shot 10%.
Yeah.
So it was 20 goals a year. You could count on it every single year. It was so funny because it was like he's going to get 200 shots and he's going to have 20 goals. He's going to shoot 10%. It's like for like 8 years that's how it was. And so I think Jeannot will be in that area. He'll get like probably more like 160 shots. He wasn't quite he didn't have the speed to find room to create that many shots that Craig Smith did, but 160 shots, he'll shoot, 11% and get to 20 goals every year. So that's kind of what I think. I wonder if Jeannot also is probably just generally speaking after that first year, it's harder to, people are planning for you. People know what to expect out of Tanner Jeannot, and he's just been having to kind of adjust to the adjustments. So
yeah, and that makes sense. And he's not fighting as much.
He's not fighting as much. Yeah,
maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe you got to throw these hands if you want to throw pucks into the net. I don't know.
Yeah, I would not suggest fighting to combat the.
I'm just saying, if there's a
I hate to sound like a softie.
What?
I hate to sound like a softie.
Well, no, I mean, you get in a fight, you take yourself out of the game at, long term.
Yeah.
Over the course of night in and night out, that's going to hurt your team because everybody's going to have to play more. But
yeah,
if that's part of the formula, it's part of the formula.
His penalty minutes per game. Let's look at his penalty minutes per game. Down significantly down, 1.6 down to 1.1. So that's good. That's a really good sign. So where does Tanner Jeannot go from here? Like I said, I think he's going to go on a tear at some point. And by tear, I just mean a couple weeks where he scores a few goals and gets a little bit more back on track. Maybe less of the focus is on him. And if he's doing it on that line with Glass and Niederreiter, that's even better because that probably means that line is stuck together and they still have a good presence as a kind of shutdown line.
Yeah.
So that'd be good to see for old Tanner as he enters into an RFA summer.
Yeah.
Really, we're going to do a show on this at some point, not today, but really interesting RFA summer for the Nashville Predators. Tanner Jeannot, Cody Glass, Thomas Novak, Dante Fabro, Alex Carrier. I mean, and they don't have a ton of money to spend. They got enough to sign. They could sign all those guys if they wanted to, but it'd be kind of tight, and they might have to really make some decisions like Fabro or Carrier, Tommy Novak or Tanner Jeannot. Surely they're going to keep Cody Glass. I don't think that's in any worry. But
well, when the rent comes due, you may have to give up a jewel or two. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to make some decisions there. We'll talk more about that later. But this week, the Nashville Predators play Tuesday against Montreal. That's a home game. And then they embark upon a long stretch of road games starting Thursday at Carolina, Friday at Washington. So they get the Hurricanes and the Capitals, two good teams in the East. Going to be tough to come away with points in those two games. But that's the start of a 5-game road trip where they go from Carolina, Washington, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal. So they go up to Canada for the second half of that. And then they come back home mid-January. So
I don't know how that's going to go. Like you said,
Yeah,
that's kind of a
tough.
tall order.
Going to be tough for the Predators, who are sitting at 500 in sixth place. So
Yeah.
That's good for our show. Any thoughts before we get going?
I don't know, man. I'm curious to see. Because you're seeing Forsberg start to trend in the right direction. If you're going to see other players kind of trend in the right direction as well. That's really what I'm going to be looking at over the next stretch of games, especially as they close off or close out that last second set of 20 games. So I'm interested. My ears are perked up listening or watch. Ears can't watch. I don't know how the body works. I'm a grown man, but either way, I'm curious to see how things go for some of those guys. That's what I'll be paying attention to. How's that?
That sounds good.
Ears and eyes.
Perk up those ears. Perk up those ears and point them to the television so you can watch what's going on.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Until then, you can check out all of our coverage at A to Z Sports. Check it out there. We both write a couple things a week, and there are definitely people covering this team. So we're two of them. They're every week covering, writing, we think, interesting things. But we also cover all the home games and everything. So don't forget about us here at A to Z Sports, because we've been doing it all year long. And when a lot of these other people come in and start covering the team at the end of the year, when the Titans are no longer playing, just remember.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Remember your friends, Alex and Shaun. Alex, how many seasons? This is what season for you covering the team?
I think it's the 9th.
9th? This is my 6th season. We have a combined 15 years of covering this team.
There you go.
That's wow. That's a lot.
So follow us on Twitter at AlexDarty1 and at SCSNSH, and we will be back in next week with another episode. See you, everybody.